What's up, boys and girls? This is episode 2 of the ChainGang podcast, and week 1 was pretty eventful, honestly. A lot of calls we got to go over. Um, a lot of things to talk about today. But first on the docket, we obviously got to go over some of the more controversial calls made by the referees this week. So we will go over them. Kind of give our opinion as honorable referees. I would say we earned that title since, we're repping the gear. So we got that today. And then we're also going to be talking about things that we learned from week 1, that we didn't know before week 1. And then Justin Fields, we got to talk about him. Should he start in Chicago the way Andy Dalton played last week? It might be his time. We don't know. We're going to talk about that. Is Derek Carr an elite quarterback? That he put up an amazing performance against the Ravens, so we'll check that out. Obviously, we got our game picks and so much more, so stay tuned for the rest of the episode. But first, like I said before, we're going to go over some controversial calls that happened this past week. And the first one we got up is a roughing the passer that was called on Zadarius Smith that actually took away an interception from the Packers. So I'm going to play it for you. And then we'll have Stat Boy read off the rules for roughing the passer, and then we'll kind of talk about it.
Oh, famous Jameis, no.
All right, we're going to watch it one more time.
Beautiful quality.
Okay, so Stat Boy, we just watched that play. Obviously, it was a roughing the passer call. So before we, kind of jump into it, what is the technical rule for roughing the passer?
So the rule book says that a defensive player cannot make overly forceful moves against the passer, such as lifting the quarterback in the air or driving him into the ground.
Okay, so Justin, what did you think about this call? I mean, did it look like roughing the passer to you? Do you think it was worth them taking away that interception from the Packers?
I think it was a bad call. He didn't lower his helmet. He didn't lower his shoulder. He just had a lot of momentum, obviously, as you do as a pass rusher, and he hit him. And as soon as he tackled him, he let go, moved on, got back, and they called roughing the passer. I think it was a bad call.
Yeah, I agree. I think it made it look worse because it was almost like he was like, kind of going for his neck a little bit. Zadarius Smith is a big dude. So, and Jameis, it doesn't really have the upper body strength to, like Big Ben does, to keep himself upright. So I agree. I think it was a bad call. I don't think it was worth taking the interception away from the Packers. He was trying to be safe in the play anyways. You can see he didn't, land on Jameis Winston in any way. He kind of got out of the way. So I agree. I don't think this was a roughing the passer call, but Ryan, do you think differently?
Yeah, I think it was a bad call based off just the biggest thing is the fact that he did not land on him. I mean, he rolled kind of to the left to get out of the way so that his body weight didn't come on Jameis.
Right.
And between the release of the pass and the hit, there was only one step that he took, and there's no way a man that size is breaking off that tackle at a step.
Yeah, right. And I think that kind of goes off of what Justin said also about his momentum. So, roughing the passer has kind of evolved in the, last couple of years. They've been calling it a lot more to protect the quarterbacks. And I respect that, because we want our quarterbacks to be healthy and to be able to play in the league. But at the same time, the guy like that, when he has the momentum he does, and especially when when you're taking away an interception on that call.
Yeah, that cost Green Bay the game.
That's a pretty bold call to make. So yeah, I think we can all agree that roughing the passer should not have been called here. So our next play that we're going to look over is I think the most controversial one that probably cost the Cowboys the game for sure was the Thursday night game where Chris Godwin may or may not have pushed off of his corner. So we're going to take a look at that play, and then Stat Boy is going to read us the rules on pass interference. All right, we're going to watch it again. So Statboy, what is the technical rule for offensive pass interference?
So pass interference is by when either team does any act by a player more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage, and that act significantly hinders any eligible player's opportunity to catch the ball.
I personally think this was a good no call. He might have looked like he extended his arms out a little bit, but there was some both ways. So I think it was a good no call. And it was at a very crucial part of the game. So I think either way, this is a tough call to make, but I think they made the right call here by not calling a pass interference.
Yeah, I agree. I think the no call was the right move, just because if you watch the video, Godwin's arm never fully extended.
Mhm.
He had a bent arm at all times. And the defender also had two hands on Godwin at the same time. There was
Right.
definitely some hand-to-hand combat going on. That's just part of the routes that happen nowadays. I mean, that's how every route goes.
Mhm.
I don't think it was anything so beyond anything that a call should have been made. As much as I agree, most of the time the refs helped Brady. This time, I think it was okay.
Yeah, I agree. Justin, what do you think?
I'm glad we're on the same page. I agree with Ryan. When you get in a route like that, there's gonna be hand fighting, and it looks more like the corner just kind of fell than he was pushed. And it's the last 2 minutes of a very crucial drive, and you got to let him play it out. It's football.
Right, because if you call offensive pass interference there, the Bucs had a lot of momentum going down that drive because that was in the final minute of that game, and I'm pretty sure all they needed was a field goal. So I feel like that call decides the game basically. So I think it was a great no call by the refs. So the refs they made the right decision on this one, unlike the last one. So we got one more play to look over this week. It was also in a very close game, not exactly the decider, but it was whether Dalvin Cook fumbled this ball or not. And I think this is the toughest play that we're going to have to call. So let's take a look. It's hard because you can't really. It's a hard angle to look at.
There's no
honestly.
good camera angles.
Yeah, it's really tough because there's so many guys in the way of it.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna watch it one more time.
Play it again.
Because it looks like he's down right there, and then the ball pops out. All right, stat boys. So then what is the rule on fumbles?
When a fumble takes place, the player's knee or elbow or any other part of their body has to be on the ground for it to be not considered a fumble. If it is a fumble, they're in the upright position. None of those are touching the ground. That is when a fumble occurs and not a rule that they were down.
So, like I said, as I was commentating on that play, I think that Dalvin Cook was down. I don't think that was a fumble at all. It was the camera angles weren't the best, so you couldn't really tell that much. But yeah, I think he was down. I don't consider that a fumble. So yeah, I already said mine. So Ryan, what did you think? Did you think this was a fumble? No fumble?
I think that the refs were in no position to make a decision as it was, which made the decision really hard. But what I do think the refs made the right call is not overturning the decision they made. Whether they made the right decision or not on the field, there was no concrete evidence that was or wasn't a fumble that I think it should have been overturned based off the way the rules are now. I agree. I think his butt was down, that it wasn't a fumble. But if the call they made on the field that it was, there was no review that should have changed that. So I think they made the right call there.
Yeah, it was. I agree. I think it was too close, to overturn it either way. Justin, what do you think?
Like Ryan said, I think, there's a split second between when his butt touches the ground when the ball pops out. And so I'm not really sure. It's a terrible camera angle, and I just don't think it's enough proof to overturn it. But, it could have gone either way. So I'm okay with it, but we need better camera angles.
Yeah, true. So those were kind of our controversial calls for the week. Let us know any other calls, that we should go over. You can submit them to, the ChainGang Instagram or just comment on the YouTube video, let us know. But the next topic that we're going over that I did not say that we were going over, it was included in the and more part of it. Guys, the Titans and the Packers were surprisingly disappointing in their week 1 performance. They both got blown out by good teams. They weren't like terrible teams, but they still looked terrible in both their games. So my question is to you guys, who is the bigger disappointment, the Titans or the Packers?
I think the Packers are the bigger disappointment. I mean, you can't have all this buildup of the last dance with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and then come out and look like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely disgusting. And against a guy like Jameis Winston, who was nothing.
Hey, he threw 5 touchdowns.
Dude's a dog now. Don't get me wrong,
touchdowns.
but like coming into it, it felt so wrong.
Yeah, I don't like. I hate that they're categorizing this as Last Dance because I guess it's technically, the last year. But when you think about it, Michael Jordan's Last Dance, he was actually, committed to the team. Unlike Aaron Rodgers, who the entire offseason was, tormenting his GM and really the fan base of whether he was going to come back or not. So I honestly am really disappointed in Aaron Rodgers. I am convinced that he's just throwing the season until he gets benched and they trade him. Because Jordan Love eventually came in and, he didn't look terrible, but I mean, throwing 2 interceptions, where in one game where last season he threw 5 the entire season, that's a major disappointment. And I think the Packers just didn't even think the Saints, were any competition. They really underrated the Saints here, thinking they could, go up and down the field. Because it just wasn't Aaron Rodgers. It was also Aaron Jones only had 5 carries for 9 yards. Devontae Adams had 5 catches. So, the Packers just never really got anything going. So I agree. I think the Packers were definitely the bigger disappointment. But I think the biggest disappointment of anybody between the two teams was Derek Henry. Just because, the Cardinals really shut him down. And, that doesn't always happen. A guy like that, it's hard to shut him down.
The biggest disappointment was whatever left tackle had to cover Chandler Jones.
That is true. He actually did end up getting benched halfway through the game. Yeah, because Chandler Jones got 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles in one game. That's crazy. People don't do that. So, I agree. The Titans' offensive line was probably the biggest disappointment of anybody, but I think the Packers were the more disappointing team. Justin, what do you think?
I'm gonna agree. And building off what Dylan said, the whole Packers offense looked dysfunctional. Their defense wasn't great either, but their offense was just terrible. It just wasn't clicking. And that all starts with the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers had one of the worst games of his entire career, and just disappointing. And I'd like to say I told you so from last week. Aaron Rodgers is not going to have a good season. He's not going to be an MVP candidate, and the Packers aren't going to do very well. And I'd like to reinforce my point from last week. And then going back to the Titans, Derrick Henry is definitely disappointing, but you can't expect your running back to do much without an O-line pushing the defense.
Right.
And again, it's hard to counter a guy like Chandler Jones who had that type of game.
Yeah, it is. But Justin, I would like to point out that you did still pick the Packers to win that game last week, as we all did. But obviously, no one could have predicted that beating. But I will say, Stat Boy, I think there was an interesting stat with the Saints, though. What happened the last time the Saints beat a team 38-3?
Last year, the Saints beat a team 38-3. That team went on to win the Super Bowl. They were Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So I don't know about you guys, but it looks like the Packers are already destined for the Super Bowl.
So it is the last dance.
It is. You know what?
Michael Jordan lost his first game in the last dance, and he put up 30, and the Packers put up 3, which is basically 30 without the 0.
Exactly. So I guess this means that the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl and that all of our predictions are wrong because I think we all didn't pick the Packers. So yeah, that is a very interesting stat. And also the last time Aaron Rodgers threw 2 interceptions in the opening game, they actually went on to win the Super Bowl. So they got 2 stats going for them to win the Super Bowl this year, which, is really surprising.
But they're not going to make the playoffs.
Okay, well, we'll see about that one. But kind of, leading into our next topic, I'd like to go over things that we learned week 1. So we'll all say probably 2 things that each of us learned from watching the week 1 games, I'll go first. I hate to go, with the homers, but the Steelers with a run game is a very scary team. And I kind of noticed that. And the Steelers in the first half, like I said, the Steelers with a run game is a scary team. In the first half against the Bills, it was a very defensive game. I mean, the entire game was a defensive game, but they didn't score any points in the first half. And Najee only had 8 rushing yards. And Ryan, I don't know about you, but as a Steelers fan, I was shitting my pants thinking that we made the wrong pick there because – I mean, it honestly wasn't even really his fault. He just didn't have any gaps.
He made good runs. I mean, he wasn't getting negative yards. Yeah. He was just hitting. There was like a 5-person unblocked team right there waiting for him.
Yeah, the Bills' defensive, they have a good run defense. So, I wasn't too worried about Najee's future, but the Steelers really turned it up in the second half. He had 8 carries for 37 yards, which isn't great, but, it's a lot better than, 8 yards a carry. So Najee needs, he has some work to do in the receiving game, but when the run game was going for the Steelers, they looked good. They scored all 23 of their points in the second half. Although one of them was a defensive touchdown, still they, started to find their offensive flow a little bit once that run game opened up. So them beating the Bills and, showing that if they have a run game, they can compete with most of the offenses in the NFL. Steelers could be a scary team after a lot of people doubted them because, Ben is he's hitting that grandfather age. So I think what we learned is that the Steelers could be a scary team with a good run game. Justin, what did you learn from week 1?
Personally, as a Patriots fan, I'd just like to point out that Damian Harris, I think, is going to have a very good year. I think he had 17 carries for 115, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he was looking good. I'm very excited to see what he does this season. And I'm calling it right now. I think he rushes for over 1,200 yards.
It's a good prediction. And, Damian Harris did get a lot of touches and it was against the Dolphins last week. Another good run defense. So I think that's a good point. Damian Harris is going to be a huge part of that offense going forward. I think the Patriots have a lot more work to do on their team. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Damian Harris is going to have a really good year. Ryan, what'd you learn from week 1?
My biggest take from week 1 is that Matt Stafford has found his home, and I think the Rams they're missing. Yep. They had the key right there in Matt Stafford. Mm-hmm. They are a scary team right now, and he is absolutely dogging it. He had 2 50-plus yard touchdowns this week. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Oh my gosh.
With their defense as it is, and now their run game can have something to lean against. Now that they have a solid pass game, they're a scary team going into this.
Yeah, and it really sucks that Cam Akers went out for them because, man, if Cam Akers was healthy, he's obviously the best looking running back on that team. That would be a scary offense. And with Tyler Higbee coming up, like you said, they're going to be a good team. And I think the Rams have to be Super Bowl favorites for sure.
Yeah.
So another thing I learned from week 1, me personally, was I think we're underestimating Joe Burrow. All right, I know we all picked the Vikings to win last week, and we were almost right. They kind of came back, but then, the Bengals pulled it out in overtime. But Joe Burrow he went 20 for 27, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, and got sacked 5 times and lost like 60 yards. Man has no time in the pocket whatsoever, but he's still putting up good numbers against a good defense, and he's leading his team to dubs, with having no time in the pocket. I think Jamar Chase is going to be huge for him this year. I had a lot of doubts going in, with his dumb comments about adjusting to catching, an NFL ball versus a college ball. But I think Joe Burrow is going to be a guy to watch this year. And I think he can pull the Bengals to a 500 record. I honestly do. So I think Joe Burrow is just being being underrated by all the analysts, and I expect him to have a pretty big year. But Justin, what was something else you learned from week 1?
I watched the Thursday game. I thought it was a great game, and my big takeaway was I think the Cowboys have the best wide receiver core in the league. I was never sold on CeeDee Lamb. But see him in that game, I think he really has some superstar potential. And that next to Michael Gallup and
Mari Cooper.
Amari Cooper. I'm really excited to see what they do because I think if Dak can stay healthy, they're gonna have a really good year. And I'm not sold on the rest of the team, but their wide receiver core is looking very nice.
Yeah, dude, I agree. CeeDee Lamb looked like a monster. He made the Bucs corners look silly in that game. His ability to make space and just, the moves that he's got to get around the corners and safeties, he's going to be a nasty weapon for the Cowboys this year. My only concern is that Dak's overuse. I mean, he had about 60 pass attempts in that game against the Bucs. That's a lot, so, and especially on a Thursday night, coming back from the brutal injury he came back from, I'm just worried that the Cowboys are going to exhaust Dak. But I think I'm going to have to disagree with you. I don't think the Cowboys had the best receiving core. They're definitely, pretty solid. But I don't think they're the best.
All right, who's the best?
I would say the Bucs are definitely better. With Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is looking like he was a couple years ago with the Steelers. And when Godwin is healthy, he's insane. And Mike Evans, 1v1, can pretty much beat out anybody except Jalen Ramsey. But, and with Tom Brady, a quarterback, that just makes the receivers, just makes them all better. So, I mean, I really think they're a better receiving core. The Titans, if they're healthy, if, the offensive line can actually guard AJ Brown, Julio, and somebody else, literally anybody else. That's a pretty good wide receiver core too. So I agree. The Cowboys are definitely top 10, top 5 for sure. I don't know about 1. Also, if
I have to disagree with you.
Ryan, what did you learn from week 1?
I think one of the other big takeaways from week 1 is that Kyler Murray can put up an MVP caliber season. I think he looked really good out there. I think his speed and his arm strength is a crazy duo because there were plays he was just running circles around people, and then he'd make a throw off with both feet in the air that was 40 to 50 yards downfield. And with D-Hop down there to catch it doesn't matter where you throw it anyway. So I think he could put up some crazy numbers like that.
I agree. He was making the Titans defense look silly, and their D-line is not a bad D-line. They got Bud Dupree, and that's really all they need is Bud Dupree because he's a monster. But I agree. Kyler Murray was putting up. He was making great plays for the Cardinals, and having D-Hop just really transforms that entire offense. So he was my offensive player of the week for sure. I think he put up the best numbers of really anybody on the offensive side of the ball. So yeah, I could totally see Kyler Murray putting up a good season. I think he's kind of an underdog for MVP candidate for sure, especially with his rushing ability.
I definitely think you have an MVP season, but I know I've talked to Dylan about this extensively. I never bet on scrambling quarterbacks. I just never trust them.
That's reasonable. Personally, I hate Kyler Murray because I'm a big WVU fan, and he kept them out of the playoffs when he was at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So that pissed me off.
Yeah, true. So those are kind of the things we learned from week 1. I think we'll have this kind of segment pretty much every week. But the next topic, the one I honestly have been looking forward to the most, is that should Justin Fields. But our last topic before we get into game picks, watching that Monday night game, it was a good Monday night game. Usually quite good. I did not expect the Raiders to put up the fight that they did, but they held their ground with, that defense somehow survived Lamar Jackson. Max Crosby has definitely become a much better player for the Raiders, but I think the Raiders player that we should be talking about is Derek Carr. He played like an elite quarterback in that game, and he's had that those kind of games in prime time. So my question to you guys is Derek Carr now an elite quarterback?
No.
Or do you think he has to have a couple more of these games?
No, absolutely not. He first and foremost has to continuously do this. He has to have this season after season to be an elite quarterback. at least 2 seasons in a row, I'd say. He's a good starter. He's a fringe Pro Bowler. Sometimes he's a Pro Bowler. And, I wouldn't have any issue with him as my starting quarterback. But there's no way I'd put him on a stage with like a Dak Prescott or an Aaron Rodgers from last year or a Josh Allen. Not a chance.
Right. So let me ask you this, though. So you could argue that Derek Carr doesn't really have an elite receiver like most elite quarterbacks do. He has Darren Waller, but, that's not a receiver. So if you put Devontae Adams on that Raiders team, do you think Derek Carr is an elite quarterback?
No. Even if Derek Carr was on the Bucs, I still don't think he could be an elite quarterback.
Dude, I don't know. I mean, with that wide receiver core, think about the wide receiver core he has now, okay? He has, like, Brian Edwards, Henry Ruggs, like dog water. All those guys are dog water, okay? If you give him a wide receiver core like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown, and, can't forget about Scotty Miller, and Gronk, that's an insane receiving core, especially with that offensive line. I think Derek Carr would become an elite quarterback. But I think he's definitely on his way if he's not one now. Even in that game against the Ravens, who have a pretty good defense, I would say top 10, maybe top 5. He had 2 game-winning touchdowns, one to go into overtime and then one, to win the game. He threw for 4. So Derek Carr put up a pretty stellar performance against the, Ravens defense. And I know he was at home, so, that kind of had some effect. But Stat Boy, what kind of numbers did he put up against them?
56 attempts, completed 34 passes, 435 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 1 interception, had 3 receivers over 70 yards, and 2 game-winning touchdowns.
I think the 3 receivers over 70 yards is the most impressive stat, honestly, out of all of that, especially considering the receivers he does have. So I don't know, man. This game by itself might make Derek Carr an elite quarterback because I feel like he was already kind of on the fringe before. This might have pushed him over.
Derek Carr's always been a good quarterback. I think he's had one close to elite year, and it hasn't happened in a while. And that inconsistency is what keeps him from being an elite quarterback. And I think I agree with Justin that even on the Bucs, he's not an elite quarterback because I don't think his receiving core is what's keeping him from being elite. I think it's his own football IQ that sometimes just shits the bed for some reason. Sometimes he comes out and he's an elite quarterback, and other days he comes out and he's just mediocre. I think his inconsistency isn't based off his receivers. I do think he's really good, and I think he's a great quarterback at times. Yeah. I think he's too inconsistent to be elite.
I don't know, dude. I mean, I think I agree. Derek Carr is definitely inconsistent for sure. And, he needs to be more consistent, to be considered a elite quarterback. But I think for sure he's on his way if he keeps putting up numbers like this. And I think Derek Carr is on his way to a really good season. I think the Raiders are going to be dark horses for a wild card spot this year. So enough about Derek Carr. We're going to be going over our week 2 game picks. And Sapboy, I want you to go over our records from last week. Because not to brag, but I may or may not have gotten the best record out of us.
You're right. Dylan did have the best record at 8-7. Right behind him was Ryan with 7-8, but Justin was 5-10.
Oof, man, Justin, you made some bad picks last week. I think the Patriots might have been the worst one, even though I probably also picked the Patriots. But you also said that the Lions were going to win. So,
Look, you never know with football, dude. It's week 1. There's plenty of upsets. You never know what's going to happen. You're not sure how these teams are going to interact, how their offseason went, how rookies are gonna step up. I made some bad calls. I'll get better from here. And the Patriots was not the worst call. It was a 16-17 game. The Lions was definitely my worst call. But you know what? I'm willing to take that risk.
Hey, you know what? Props to you though, because the Lions almost made a 33-point comeback. And Jared Goff didn't look too bad in that game. So Justin will aim to look better this week. But from now on, Justin, you get lucky this week. You won't get a punishment. But from now on, every person that is the worst in that week with picking games will receive a punishment from the other 2 that they will be forced to do. So Justin gets off this week because I just thought of this idea right before the podcast. But we're ready to jump in to some week 2 picks. So for the first game, we got Thursday night. We got the Giants versus the football team. Stat boy, who's injured for this game?
For the Giants, Saquon Barkley is still questionable, and Evan Ingram's out. He will not play.
And for the football team?
Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's not coming back for quite a long time, and Curtis Samuel is also going to be out.
Okay. I think honestly, I mean, Saquon he was very limited in his snaps week 1. So honestly, I don't think he really has an effect on this game if he plays or not, because Washington football team has a great defense. So for me, defense wins championships, defense wins games. I'm taking the football team, even with Fitzpatrick out. I think Antonio Gibson's going to go off this game with, Bradbury and McLaurin. I'm taking the football team here.
Well, you see, Daniel Jones is undefeated against the football team, despite him being terrible. I'm pretty sure that's a correct stat. I could be making that up. But nonetheless, with Evan Ingram out, no one's going to be there to drop balls for him, which will also help.
It's true.
So I think the upset of the week could be right here. The Giants win.
Okay. You think Kenny Galladay is going to have a good game?
I think he will.
Okay. All right. Justin, who are you taking?
I am going to side with Ryan. I'm going to take the Giants, even though I don't think Daniel Jones is a very good quarterback. I think his receiving core is okay. I think his O-line is okay, and I think his defense is okay. And for the football team, I'd take him if Fitzpatrick was in. But not having your starting quarterback and a starting quarterback who's already kind of below par, as much as I love Fitzmagic, plus your wide receiver 2 being out, it's just not a good combination. And I don't think their defense is going to pull it off. I could see it happening, but I wouldn't bet on it. So I'm going to take the Giants.
Taylor Heineke doesn't have it in him.
He's a fourth quarter player. That's it.
I don't know, man. McLaurin, when Heineke went in, McLaurin started to kind of go off. He had all of his catches in the second half. But we'll see. I'm a little hurt that Justin continues to disrespect our boy Fitzmagic here.
I love Fitzmagic. He's not in. That's why I'm not taking him.
True.
Okay. All right. So for the first 1:00 game, we got Saints versus the Panthers. Stat boy, who's out for this game?
2 questionable players for the Saints are Quan Alexander and Marcus Davenport. Marshawn Lattimore is doubtful, and Michael Thomas will not be playing. And the Packers, only one guy will be out, AJ Bouye.
Yeah. Marshawn Lattimore being out for this game would actually be kind of huge. But honestly, I don't know if it's going to matter. I think the Saints defense is still going to be good enough to limit Sam Darnold. He looked good in week 1, but it was against the Jets. So I don't have any hope in Sam Darnold this week. I think Jameis Winston is going to continue, his starting quarterback run. So I think I'm going to take the Saints in this game.
I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna take the Saints. I think it's dangerous missing your cornerback 1 because I don't feel like they have a lot of depth there. I wouldn't trust their DB position. But Jameis Winston was looking pretty good, and if you can keep that up, then I'm gonna take the Saints. I think their offense is gonna move pretty well, and I really like Sam Darnold. I think he's gonna have a pretty good year, but I don't think he's gonna have enough to get it done this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Saints are going to take this one, and the offense was looking good. I think Jameis Winston's ready to suck on some dubs, and he's going to keep that flowing.
All right. So for the next game, we got Bengals versus the Bears. Stat boy, who's out for this game?
Bengals are looking pretty healthy. The Bears, though, have 4 questionable players. Got Tariq Cohen, Eddie Goldman, Jason Peters, and Danny Trevathan.
So Cohen and Trevathan are actually out. This is why Statboy does not get any say in the picks. But Danny Trevathan's a pretty big loss for the Bears, honestly. He's not a big name, but he played pretty well, even in the beat down from the Rams last week. But I don't think it's going to matter. That Bears defense is too good, and the Bengals offensive line is like paper. So I think Mixon's going to have a really tough game. I don't think Burrow is going to be able to get it going. So I'm going to take the Bears here.
I like the way the Bengals looked this past week, and I think they're going to keep that rolling. I don't think the Bears have enough offense to make up for it. I do agree their defense is going to make it a hard day for Burrow, but I think the offense will be the Bengals offense will be enough to keep them out. And Tariq Cohen being out doesn't really make any difference at all. He's nothing at this point in his career. But I think the Bengals are going to take this one. I think it's going to be a good game, though.
This is a rough call because I feel like the Bears' offense is terrible, and I feel like the Bengals are terrible pretty much all around.
I was
But
gonna say, but is the Bengals defense worse than the Bears
so
offense?
here's my thing: if they do start Justin Fields, I feel like the Bears take it. But if they don't, I feel like the Bengals take it. So off my earlier statements about Andy Dalton and Justin Fields, I'm going to take the Bengals.
Okay, all right.
After
Man,
5 and 10, I don't like how much Justin's agreeing with me.
I was gonna say you two both agreed a lot more last week. So I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about my picks so far. But the next one I think we're all gonna agree on. We got the Texans versus the Browns. Stat boy, who's out for that game?
The Texans, for the Texans, only one person is questionable, Desmond King, and the Browns will be missing OBJ, who will not be playing, and then two questionable players, Jack Conklin and Jarek Wills.
So the Bears the Bears. The Browns are missing two offensive linemen here. And the number one receiver, but honestly, they could be missing their top three receivers. I don't think it would matter. I see the Browns dicking down the Texans in this game. Texans don't got a shot. This ain't the Jags defense. The Browns defense is much better. So give me the Brownies.
Yeah, I was definitely proved wrong by Tyrod Taylor last week, but I can't imagine he does it twice in a row. So I'm going to go with the Browns.
I think the Texans are going to take it. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, bro. I was like, this is a bad upset to pick for upset of the week.
No. I think the Texans are terrible. I think they got lucky going up against a rookie running a new offense last week. But I think the Browns are going to destroy them. Simple as that.
All right, the next game, which is probably the best 1:00 game we got this week, is the Rams versus the Colts. So, Stat Boy, who's out for this game?
Rams are looking healthy, just the Colts. T.Y. Hilton will not be playing, and Darius Leonard and Quentin Nelson are both questionable.
Ooh, those are some pretty key players for the Colts to be missing, especially Quentin Nelson, considering he would probably have to guard Aaron Donald. I think either way, even if both of these guys play, I don't think Carson Wentz looked good enough, against the Seahawks defense last week. I think he'll get there, but I think he's still getting used to the offense. And having to play the Rams, who are arguably the number one defense in the NFL, I think that's going to be too tough for them. So I'm taking the Rams in this one.
I'm going to take the Rams too. Matthew Stafford looked amazing last week. He has a pretty good receiving core and one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I'm just not a big on the Colts. I don't think Carson Wentz is going to be that great. And now your wide receiver one is out, plus your best offensive lineman, your best defensive lineman. I don't see how they pull that off.
Yeah, they were barely. I don't think I'd have took them anyway. And after all that, those are a lot of big people to be out, whether they are or aren't. And Matthew Stafford, I think, is going to shred up this defense as he did last week. So I think the Rams are going to win.
Agreed. So for the next game, we got the Broncos versus the Jags. Stat Boy, who's out for this game?
The Broncos, Bradley Chubb will be questionable. Ronald Darby is out, and Jerry Jeudy is out. Jags, they look healthy.
Jerry Jeudy's a pretty big loss for the Broncos. One of the better route runners in the NFL. Him and Bridgewater look to have a pretty good connection, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think Bridgewater looked really good against the Giants last week, and I think it's going to continue in week 2 against the Jags defense, especially if Tyrod Taylor can put up the numbers he did, being Tyrod Taylor. I don't think Bridgewater will have any problems, so I'm going to take the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, Bridgewater looked really good, and the Giants have a decent secondary, and he was still putting up some really good passes. And with Jerry Jeudy out, that hurts, but there's still Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant. They're still solid there. So I think the Broncos are still going to take it.
If I were going to call an upset anywhere, it would be this one, but I'm going to have to take the Broncos. I think they're going to have a better offense, and I think you're going to see their defense put some work in. They have a good pass rush, and I think you're going to see their corners do some work. I think you're going to see Patrick Surtain have a bigger role this week, and I don't think that a rookie quarterback is going to be able to handle that this week.
For the next game, we got the Bills versus the Dolphins. Stat Boy, who's out for this game?
Both squads look pretty healthy. The Bills, just Matt Milano is questionable.
Okay. This is going to be a pretty good game. Both teams have pretty good defenses, I would say. But I don't see the Bills losing 2 weeks in a row. I think Josh Allen, he didn't play bad last week, but I think he's really going to go off this week against the Dolphins. So I think the Bills are taking this easy.
Yeah, after the Steelers gave the absolute smackdown to the Bills, they're just in just fear and pain, but they're
Mhm.
going to come out swinging this week. And the Dolphins they're no Steelers. That's just the way it is.
That's the way it
I
is.
think the Bills offense will do good. This Dolphins defense will handle them pretty well, but I still think it'll be enough for the Bills to win.
I love the Dolphins defense. I love Xavier Howard. I think they have a great secondary, but I just can't see them beating the Bills. Josh Allen is my MVP candidate, and the Bills are a Super Bowl candidate. So I don't see how the Dolphins take them down this week. I'm going with the Bills.
Agreed. I think the next
Agreed.
game we got is the Patriots versus the Jets. Stat boy, who's out for this game?
Got two questionable players for the Pats in Trent Brown and Kyle Lenoy. And Stephon Gilmore, he will not be playing for the Jets. Becton and Jamison Crowder, both of them will not be playing.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. I think on 3 we can all give our picks, right? 1, 2, 3, Patriots. Yeah, Justin, kind of hesitated a little bit, and then that kind of scares me. That's his favorite team. Yeah, but there's no discussion here. They're taking the dub this week. All right, the next game we got is the 49ers versus the Eagles. Stat boy, who's out for this one?
The 49ers, Eric Armstead is questionable. Raheem Mostert and Jason Verrett, those guys are out. For the Eagles, 3 questionable players in Brandon Brooks, Zach Ertz, and Miles Sanders.
Oh, okay. Those are some key players for the Eagles that are going to be out here. But I think the way the Lions came back against the 49ers and, the way that Deebo Samuel kind of went off against the Lions, I don't think that's going to happen again this week, with Darius Slay playing for the Eagles. So I think the Eagles are going to take this one. I think Jalen Hurts is looking pretty good so far this year. So I get the Eagles at home.
I think both teams are missing some key players, which is huge. But last week the Eagles tore apart a bottom feeder Atlanta team, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that to a possible Super Bowl contender. Even with some key players questionable, I just don't think they're going to have the manpower. They have a lot of young quarterbacks. I think the coaching is going to be better, and I think the secondary and the pass rush is just going to eat them up.
I also got to go with the 49ers. I mean, Raheem Mostert being out is big, but they're used to that. Every year they get ready to lose him because that's just how he plays.
Right.
He tries to beat his own high score of how quickly he can get injured for the year. And especially if Miles Sanders is questionable, that's going to be really big for the Eagles. But either way, I still think the 49ers are going to take this one.
Yeah, and I think
my fantasy team.
and I think Raheem Mostert beat his personal record by getting hurt in week 1.
Yeah.
I think he also got hurt in week 1 last year. So the next game we got, though, Raiders versus the Steelers. Stat boy, who's out for this game?
Got 4 questionable players for the Raiders: Richie Incognito, Josh Jacobs, Yannick Njoku, and Carl Nassib. For the Steelers, they will be missing Zach Banner and Stephon Tuitt.
Props to you, Stat Boy, for pronouncing Nagagu's or whatever his name right. That actually sounded really good. But the Raiders are missing a lot of key players, and the Steelers coming off the win against the Bills. They're coming back to Pittsburgh, and with the boys representing them, I don't see how they're going down this week. I'm taking the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Derek Carr did look good last week, but I think the Steelers defense is going to be too much. We're definitely better than the Ravens defense there.
Mhm.
They're going to put a lot of pressure on him. We got good corners, good secondary. And I just don't think he'll be able to put the same numbers. And the Steelers looked good. Now that they have a run game that may or may not be on the up and up. I like the way they looked.
The Steelers do have an amazing defense. I love their secondary. Minkah Fitzpatrick is one of my favorite safeties in the league, but this is going to be my upset for the week. I'm taking the Raiders.
Wow, he's got to pick this one to be his upset.
Game, and I think this is going to be a week where Derek Carr plays like an elite quarterback, even though he's not.
And Justin's just going for our throats right now. He's really poking us where it hurts. But okay. I hope you're wrong, Justin, but we'll see. The next game we got is the Vikings versus the Cardinals. So, Stat Boy, who's out for this one?
For the Vikings, Anthony Barr is questionable. For the Cardinals, Kelvin Beachum is questionable.
Okay, I think this is going to be a good game, but the way the Cardinals played last week, Kyler Murray, he looks like he's going to have an MVP type season, and there's no one on the Vikings that can cover DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm taking the Cardinals in this one.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals looked phenomenal last week offensively and defensively, maybe even better. The defensive line was crazy. J.J. Watt is taking a lot of the hit and Chandler Jones is just basically walking in untouched every play.
Watt's getting a lot of those goal line tackles.
Yeah.
He stopped Derek Henry a couple times on the goal line. So yeah, I think that Cardinals D line is going to be hectic for Kirk Cousins.
I'm going to be going with the Cardinals too. I love their offense last week. I think Kyler Murray is having a great season, and I think he's going to do it again. I don't think the Vikings are particularly great at anything. I think their O-line is a little bit weak, that the Cardinals are going to eat that up. And I don't think their offense is going to be able to compensate for that.
All right, so for the next game, we got the Falcons versus the Bucks. Stat boy, who's out for this one?
Falcons, nobody. Falcons are completely healthy. But the Bucks, they will be missing Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Jason Pierre-Paul is questionable.
Ryan, I know you're nodding your head, but Sean Murphy-Bunting's a pretty key player for the
Man,
Bucks.
Jason Pierre-Paul shot himself again. So,
yeah, this was an obvious one. I'm taking the Bucks here. The Falcons couldn't even get close to beating the Eagles, one of the worst teams in the NFC. So the Bucks are going to take this one easy.
Yeah, again, the Falcons are bottom feeders, and the Bucks are defending champs. They have one of the best defenses in the league, one of the best offenses in the league. I just don't see how they lose that.
yeah, Bucks. I don't have to say much else.
All right, for the next one, we got the Cowboys versus the Chargers. Stat boy, who's out for this one?
Cowboys will be missing Michael Gallup and Leo Collins, and Marcus Lawrence is questionable. Chargers, Brian Bulaga is questionable.
I'm with the Cowboys injuries, even if those guys were healthy, I don't think the Cowboys are going to put up the game they did against the Bucks. So I think Herbert is going to have an absolute monster game. I'm calling over 400 passing yards for him in this game. So I'm taking the Chargers in this one.
I think this would be one heck of an offensive game because neither of them have necessarily super strong defenses.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if Dak can put up numbers like that against the Bucks defense, he can do it against anyone. And I think this will be really high scoring, but I think the Cowboys will come out on top.
But he won't have Michael Gallup this week.
You're right. Number one receiver will be out. But
yeah, I know Williams is going to have a good game.
I could see this game going either way. I think it's going to be a very good game, especially offensively, like Ryan said. But after defending the Cowboys receiver core, I'm going to have to go with the Cowboys. Michael Gallup was their third receiver in yards last week. And I think with CeeDee Lamb and why can't I remember his name?
Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper. I think they're going to get it done. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
All right. The next one, also another good game. We got the Titans versus the Seahawks. Stat boy, who's out for this one?
Two players for the Titans, A.J. Brown and Anthony Berkser. They are both questionable. Seahawks are good to go.
Russell Wilson looked like an absolute monster in week 1, and I think he's going to continue this, especially if A.J. Brown's out for the Titans. Julio does not look to be himself, and he's still getting used to the new system. So I think the Seahawks are taking this one easy.
I'm going with the Seahawks too, especially if they can get the pass rush down on Derek Henry. I don't think the Titans really stand a chance. Offensively, the receivers weren't clicking, and I just think the Seahawks have a better defense.
Yeah, I'd have to go with the Seahawks. This is that time of the year where Russell Wilson balls out and everyone wonders why he never won MVP until he starts shitting the bed later. So he's still in that point. So you can't bet against him right now.
Right. All right. So the Sunday night game, we got the Chiefs versus the Ravens. Stat boy, who's out for this one?
Chiefs, Austin Light is questionable. For the Ravens, just a couple of the many players not playing. Rashad Bateman will be out, and Marquise Brown, Marlon Humphrey, and Jimmy Smith, they're all questionable.
There's some very key players for the Ravens that are out against, they're already playing a superior team. But I think I'm going to bet against the Chiefs this week. With the Ravens at home, I think Lamar Jackson's going to go off. I think the Chiefs are, kind of tired from last week. As long as Marlon Humphrey plays, I think the Ravens have a pretty good chance. If he doesn't play, then the Chiefs are taking this one. But I'm going to assume that Marlon Humphrey plays, and I'm going to take the Ravens.
I got to stick with the Chiefs on this one. I think they look They looked good. Patrick Mahomes seems to be able to come back from anything. The Browns took a little bit of a lead that didn't matter to them, and the Ravens defense didn't look as great as I thought they were going to. I was a little unimpressed with the Ravens defense last week, and that was against Derek Carr and no one, whoever is the receiver for Derek Carr.
Hey, but Derek Carr might be an elite quarterback now.
Okay, but elite quarterback or not, it was basically you running routes out there for him. So now put Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, and I think it's no question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to go with the Chiefs. I'd really like to see the Ravens win, but I also really don't want a punishment next week. So I'm gonna have to go with the Chiefs. They're Super Bowl contenders every year. I think it's harder to bet against them.
Me and Justin learned our lesson from last week about the Chiefs.
Yeah, you guys did. But I'm taking my chance, I guess, this week with them because they gotta lose at some point. I know it's only week 2, but I think Lamar Jackson has it in him. But our last game we got the Monday night game, the Lions versus the Packers. Stat boy, who's out for this one?
For the Lions, Jeff Okudah, he will not be playing, and Tyrell Williams is questionable. The Packers, David Bakhtiari is out, so he will not be playing.
Okay. Honestly, if it was a better team, I would totally pick a team to upset the Packers. Because they just look so dysfunctional, and I don't know what is in Aaron Rodgers' head right now. So if it was a mediocre team, I think I would pick the mediocre team. But because it's the Lions, I don't think they got a shot. So I'm going to take the Packers at home in this one.
Yeah, as bad as the Packers did, I got to stick with the Packers, especially against the Lions. I saw a stat the other day that the Lions defense right now is doing worse. Like Lions defense in the past year and a half is doing worse than the 0-16 Lions defense did.
Wow.
So that's just hard to be a part of. So
it is.
Got to take the Packers there.
Jeez.
Well, you don't got to take the Packers because I'm going with the Lions. I love an upset, and after last week watching the Packers, I'm going to risk it. You know what? I liked a little bit of what I saw from the Lions against the 49ers, and why not?
But didn't you learn your lesson from last week to not pick the Lions?
I did not. I didn't learn anything.
Jeez. All right. I guess. So you're picking 2 upsets this week, though.
I am.
Man. Well, hopefully you're wrong in both of them because I also do not want the punishment because of your 2 fucked minds. I don't know what you could possibly come up with. So that is that we will go over this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And please leave a comment on who you think is going to win this week and who you think is going to get the punishments. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.
And like and subscribe.
Yeah, that too.
Comments and punishments.
Yeah.